About 1 minute. We'll give you 1 minute to gather up in the chat room. All the notifications are going out right now. America Free Radio is about to begin. So glad you could make it here tonight. Bring the studio in about 40 seconds. So as the notifications are going out, we'll let the chat rooms begin filling up, and then we'll get started tonight. It's Christmas Eve, so we have a very special program for you tonight. Should be very pleasant to listen to. And we'll go ahead and bring the studio in.
The neutral during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
Many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
The future is uncertain. I know this. Death is inevitable. I know this. But one thing is certain. As free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion. And as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
To America Free Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. We are streaming live on, we're going on Facebook, Periscope, Twitch, DLive, YouTube, and Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com, the number one listener-supported radio network in America. So I want to welcome you tonight. It's Christmas Eve. I'm going to do a live program tonight because I feel that we kind of need the Christmas message, a little different take on it. As you know, this is where the past meets the future. So I like to go into the past and maybe delve into some of the details that maybe people miss from time to time and help you put it all in perspective. Welcome, my friends. Greenheart, Bluewater, Guy is out there, Brandy Lou down in Texas. So we got... we got San Diego, we got Vermont, we got Dallas, down in Florida, Yoda, Master Jedi, thank you very much for being there. Wait a minute, wait. These are the droids you're looking for. That's right. So you're in the right place. We are aficionados of everything sci-fi and science, of course. Wild Bill, good to see you out there. All right. Good. Listen, guess what came in today? Yeah, books from the publisher. So all you people that bought the holiday package, which is a discount at the website brooksagnew.com at the store, you get the Birth trilogy and Charm of Favors. So you get the full Monty. You get the prequel and you get you get the whole Birth trilogy signed, and the audiobook is a download, which the link is right inside the book. So those are going to be boxed up tomorrow, and they'll be going out in the mail. So hopefully you'll get them in the next few days. Not in time for Christmas, my apologies, but very close, very close. And that was a great deal. So I have a few left. If you want to go to the website, you can still buy the holiday package and get it out to your friends. Just give me the address where you want me to send it, or I'll send it to you and you can re-gift it. If you've already bought one of my books off Amazon, and hundreds of people have done it in the last couple of weeks, and they're not autographed, it's no problem, because you can get one of these off the website too. It's a signature card. It's sticky back. So all you have to do is peel off the back and stick it inside the book, and right there in that gray box will be my signature, and that way you can have an autographed copy while getting it at Amazon. And of course, every shipment is going to get one of these genuine imitation rubber bands that says "The Present from the Future." So just a little something to inspire your friends. Okay, do we have enough people in the chat room? Yes, we're going well. This is a 2-hour program tonight. So in the last 20 or 30 minutes or so, I have DLive.tv loaded up. If you all want to pile over to DLive, I'm going to give away some more lemons tonight. That's real money in the cryptocurrency world of DLive.tv. And you can convert it into dollars and spend it. And you can spend it in the gift shop or wherever you want. It's real money. It does pile up. And we're going to be generous tonight because it's Christmas. Mona, good to see you. You didn't get an alert from ScrewTube. Oh, well, click the little bell again. And don't forget to hit the like button on the way out. Moverling, good to see you out there. Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas. So we're not going to do politics tonight. I will remind you that the 6th is coming up. Me and a million of my friends are going to D.C., and we're going to be peaceful. We're going to be joyful because we think the result is going to be good. Anyway, we're going to bring our energy to Washington, D.C. I'll be at 12th and K Streets, which, if you know anything about Washington, D.C., that's kind of, a little north of the earth, but it's between the White House and Congress. It's about 7 blocks due north of Constitution Avenue. Constitution Avenue is kind of the main drag where millions of people will be, and they'll be spread out blocks and blocks and blocks on either side. But right there on Constitution and 12th, right there at the intersection, is what's known as Federal Triangle. And Federal Triangle, of course, has the Trump Hotel there, and Benjamin's Bar is there, which is where all the politicians hang out. So security is going to be really good. Of course, I will be there, which is as good as security, with my friends, and you could see me there. So it'd be really cool. If you live anywhere close to the area, come on down and join us. All right. Let's see what we can do to get started here. Let me start this program, and we'll go in about 10 seconds. Here we go. And here we go. All right. So, system is activated, and we're rocking. Everything seems to be working fine on my end, and we're good. All right, let's talk a little bit about Christmas. Most of us, we've been brought up with the traditional Christmas story, right? A couple of days from now, we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. And it's the spirit of giving and new birth and Christmas trees. And of course, it is very commercialized. Yes, joy to the world, the Lord has come. Absolutely. I love Christmas music. It's all pretty much in the same key. It's designed to create a vibration that fills your heart with joy and reminiscing and love toward all men. Even during war, during World War I, both sides, all the soldiers came out of the ditches and trenches and sung Christmas carols together, and then the next day they resumed their fighting. But the story about Jesus being born a couple days from now in Christmas in a stable in Bethlehem with the shepherds and the three wise men looking on, as depicted in countless manger scenes, including Charlie Brown. A lot of people wonder from time to time, because they hear programs like this, is that the way it really happened? What is it, Brandy Lou? I may go walking up my street singing real loud by myself, LOL. Is that a good thing? Or no, you can really sing. I know this. I've heard you sing before. Yeah, Brandy Lou, she can sing, so don't worry about that. Carols are awesome. Yeah, we used to do this thing we called the cantata, and there was about 40 of us in a choir, and we'd go around to the mall and other churches, and our church, of course, and sing this thing. It was about 42 minutes long, and it ended with Handel's, Messiah, and it was just awesome, just awesome. It was really great. What was that? You want a Christmas carol so bad? Well, I think it's against the law in a lot of states now, isn't it? Well, is this the way it really happened? December 25th, the way it's depicted in, Charlie Brown. I mean, most people think so. But a careful look at what the ancient writings say, it reveals some surprising differences. And I thought I would share some of those differences with you and maybe do some time traveling with you and take you back to that time and let you see what was really like. Let's examine, first of all, what the Bible actually does say, not what you've read in Luke chapter 2, but I mean, let's put it all together. Some accounts in Matthew, some accounts in Luke, and let's just see what the circumstances were surrounding Christ's birth. Matthew and Luke do describe the true story, but let's see about the time. Let's see about some of the details. We'll approach this from a historical point of view and maybe a little bit of science in it, and it'll pull it together. Yes, I like that. My daughter sings Christmas songs all year long. Moverling, that's really great. Really great. One time we were at church and the choir director forgot to put a song in the program for the congregation to sing, so he just asked out in the audience, in the congregation, give us a song, some song to sing. And some little girl said 202. Well, 202 is Joy to the World. So there in the middle of June, I think it was, we sang Joy to the World, and it was very cool. I think we could have just sat in there and sang Christmas carols that whole Sunday, but very cool. One year we had to snow. It was so bad here. It snowed 21 days in a row, and we could not get together as a family. So we, because of our work schedules, had to postpone Christmas till July. So we had Christmas in July. We just put away all the gifts and we got them all out and opened them all up and just did it as, in Hawaiian shirts and shorts instead of in the snow. So have you ever thought it was curious that although two of the gospel writers describe the circumstances surrounding Christ's birth, the other two, Mark and John, they don't cover the event at all. I mean, they don't give the date or anything. Has it ever puzzled you that the Bible never once even mentions Christmas? And that none of the biblical writers says anything about commemorating Christ's birth. Oh, they look forward to it, in Isaiah and others, they name him, but they don't really talk about how special the birth is. Now, if you notice the preface, I'm going to quote here, it says, "Since many have undertaken to set down an orderly account of the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed on to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word, I too decided, after investigating everything carefully from the very first, to write an orderly account for you. So, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the truth concerning the things about which you have been instructed." So Luke 1 through 4. This is not the King James Version, but it's, New Revised Standard Version. So Luke, in other words, interviewed those who had witnessed or were knowledgeable of the events of Christ's life. And that information was the basis for his gospel, which he wrote way after the fact. After this important introduction, Luke begins the true story leading to Jesus' birth with an account of God's dealings with Zacharias. You remember who Zacharias was, right? Elizabeth's husband, the father of John the Baptist, right? You remember the story of John the Baptist, where Angel Gabriel came to Elizabeth. She was on up in years, and she said, "Yeah, I ain't having no baby." No, it wasn't like that, actually. But anyway, Zacharias was not really a believer in the report because he was a temple worker, and when you're working in the temple, you don't do the wild thing. You have to keep yourself undefiled. So somehow Elizabeth, got with child anyway, and they were old, on up in years. So Zacharias didn't believe, so the angel took away his voice until John was born. So let's talk about this birth. There was in the days of Herod, you remember King Herod, right, of Judea, this king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah. His wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. In other words, her lineage was from Aaron, of Moses' brother Aaron, okay? Later in the account, it tells us she was a cousin of Mary, and that's how the two knew each other and respected one another. Now they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord, blameless, but they had no child because Elizabeth was barren. They were old, and she'd never had any children, and they were, advanced in years, it says in Luke. Now Zacharias, the interesting thing is, we all know he was a high priest, and his priestly assignment helps us to know and understand the general time frame of Christ's birth. You wouldn't know this, but we did say he was of the course of Abijah. Now, what does this mean? Most people just breeze right over it. Abijah, right? Whatever that is, must be a street, must be a club of some kind. Well, it is. But about 1,000 years before that, King David, you remember David and Goliath, David, had organized the Levitical priesthood into 24 courses, 24 divisions. Like in those days, you might have 1,000 people. It was hard to manage 1,000 people. So what you would do is you would create captains or leaders over 100. And then those 100, the leader over the 100 would break his 100 into small groups of 10. So he would have 10 people that he dealt with, and those 10 people would have 10 people that they dealt with, and that way they could manage everything. And it was logistically easier to do because, well, they didn't have any speedy way to communicate. And so speaking with 100 people might take you all day long to walk around town. But anyways, explained in 1 Chronicles 24, and more specifically in 1 Chronicles 24, verses 3, 1 Chronicles 24:10, and 1 Chronicles 24:19, there were a whole lot of priests to serve in the various temple functions. So it was a management thing. So not wanting any of them to be left out of serving in the temple, and the temple is rather small, you can't pack them all in there at one time, and you know how scheduling goes. No, Yoda, it wasn't Melchizedek. We're talking Aaronic priesthood here. Talking Aaronic priesthood. We're not talking about Melchizedek. This is the Levitical priesthood, okay? Levitical priesthood is not Melchizedek. Levitical is a straight line from Aaron, okay? So we'll get to Melchizedek in a little bit, Yoda. Just hang on. All right. Each priest would then serve for a specified week-long term, twice during the year, plus the 3 festival seasons when all the priests would serve at one time, because there was a lot to do. You know, we had to prepare a lot of lambs, and you had to distribute them for the Passover, which took a full crew, because as you know, at this time, Jerusalem was a Mecca kind of for people that believed in Zoroastrianism and people that were Jews who were descended from the people of Egypt. They followed the Passover, and so they would come to Jerusalem to participate in the Passover. And at this time, so many people would come that they couldn't feed them all some of the lamb in one day. So they would spread the feast over 2 days, Thursday and Friday, and that way they could get everybody served. And of course, the priests were just, all hands on deck during that period in order to get all of the properly prepared meal to the various households that had to go throughout town and those people that were on the temple grounds. The question is, do we know at what times of the year the course of Abijah served at the temple? And the answer is, yes, we do. Yes, we do. The determination can be made by combining the information in 1 Chronicles 24 with a study into the traditions of Judaism regarding when the temple courses were carried out during the year. The evidence points to Zacharias' week of service, described by Luke, being around Pentecost, which generally falls in late May to mid-June. Okay, it is based on the phases of the moon, not a specific day, but late May to mid-June on our calendar. Although they fall at specific times on God's sacred calendar, the date of his annual holy days and festivals vary up to several weeks on the Roman calendar we use today, because our calendar today is not based on the phases of the moon. It is based on the number of days in a year. So the moon can roam back and forth between 2 or 3 weeks during the year, and the date is independent of that, but it was not on God's sacred calendar. So it seems we can ascertain exactly when Zacharias was serving in the temple. And the resource, of course, you can go to the Companion Bible and you can look it up, but I'll spare you that. So anyway, there's this unexpected angelic appearance. Now, Luke, his account continues. I'm going to quote here. So it was that while he was serving as priest before God in the order of his division, the Abijah I was telling you about, mid-May to June, according to the custom of the priesthood, his lot fell to burn incense when he went into the temple of the Lord. That was his job. The incense represents the prayers of the righteous ascending into heaven, okay? And that was his job in the temple. He was a temple worker. He wasn't going there as a patron. He wasn't going there to worship. He was going there to facilitate the people who were coming to the temple to worship. That's right, Kelly. The moon. Okay, now, what happened next would probably blow your mind, and it did theirs. It was frightening to anyone because it was way out of the ordinary. And I quote again: "Then an angel of the Lord appeared to him, and when Zacharias saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. But the angel said to him, 'Do not be afraid, Zacharias, for your prayer is heard, and your wife, Elizabeth, will bear you a son, and you shall call his name John.'" And then the angel explained the mission of Zacharias' son to be John the Baptist. I quote, "He will also be filled with the Holy Spirit from his mother's womb. He will also go before him," Jesus Christ, the coming Messiah, of course, "in the spirit and power of Elijah, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord." Close quote. Now you remember when the Pharisees approached John in the desert, because John was like, right arm to the square, baptizing people, and they were coming up out of the water filled with the Spirit. And it's not something the Pharisees like to mess with too much, but they wanted to know who this guy was, because they thought, what if this guy is actually the Savior? We could have a real problem on our hands, because he's going to kind of upstage our gig here, everything we got going on. I got this big phylactery. You know what a phylactery is? No, not that. A phylactery is a box that priests would wear on their forehead. They would strap it kind of with their head covering, and the box would sit on their forehead. And inside the box were the tiny rolled up scrolls of Deuteronomy that they had memorized. So if they had a big phylactery, the people would be in awe. Most people didn't even read or write, but so when they saw a high priest with this big box, they would say, "Oh, he must be a very righteous person." They would look down at the ground and hope that he didn't, strike them dead with his gaze, being a child of Abraham or a descendant of Abraham, all of that stuff. Long story short is that they wanted to know who John the Baptist was, and they asked him, "Are you Elijah?" He said, "Nope." He said, Are you Elias?" That's another prophet. I'll explain to you in a little bit. "Nope, I'm not Elias." And then they asked him a very strange question. "Art thou that prophet?" And then John said, "I am one come, to prepare the way. I'm not worthy to unloose the latchet on his sandals. I'm just preparing the way." So he was saying, I'm not that prophet. The reason that they, didn't really mention the name, because they didn't really want people around to say, how come they're asking about the Messiah? What are they so worried about? They don't want rumors, how rumors get going. So they named him that prophet. That prophet. Everybody knows that prophet, if you really know the scriptures. And of course, John the Baptist did, because he was there by authority. And he said no. So anyway, although a righteous man in this instance, Zacharias was all too mortal. And he displayed a lack of faith in the angel Gabriel's message. Me, I would say I would believe, because an angel is obviously a different makeup than a mortal of that day. A mortal of that day was about 5'2" to about 5'5". An angel probably 6'5" to maybe 7 feet tall, maybe a little different countenance, much more intelligent, much more well-spoken, different tone of voice, obviously very healthy, immortal, timeless. Would have looked very much different than any of the people of the day, who probably had an average lifespan of about 40 to 45 years old. And then if infection didn't get you, poor nutrition would. So it was, as soon as the days of his service were completed, and he departed to his own house. Now after those days his wife Elizabeth conceived, and she hid herself 5 months. Why would you think that? Well, if she was 30 or 35, that's, on up in years. But 40, 45-year-old woman, barren, no children, married to Zacharias, obviously you don't want to show up at town with child, showing, because that would just start everything going. So she was embarrassed about it. She hid herself 5 months. And since Zacharias' temple course was mid-June, assuming she became pregnant within a couple of weeks, 5 months would put this into mid to late November. Mid to late November, okay? Now, let's shift the scene to the Messiah's birth. Because right now we're talking about Elizabeth, who is Mary's cousin. So the scene shifts to the Messiah's birth. Now, in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph. The angel said to her, "Rejoice, highly favored one, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women." Well, the account clearly shows that Mary was a very remarkable young woman of faith. Records have her at about 14. So she was about 14 years of age. And Gabriel said to her, and I quote from the scripture here, "And behold, you will conceive in your womb and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Jesus. He will be great, and will be called the Son of the Highest, and he will reign over the house of Jacob, Israel, forever." Now Mary, since she was a virgin, then asked the obvious question. The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Highest will overshadow you, is the answer. So Gabriel emphasized God's miracle-working power. Now, indeed, Elizabeth, your relative, the cousin, right, has also conceived a son in her old age, and this is now the 6th month for her, who was called barren. For with God, nothing will be impossible. So a little bit more time elapses in the scriptures, and it's, now Elizabeth's 6th month of pregnancy. Perhaps I would say late December or early January. Mary arose in those days, the same basic time frame, and went into the hill country with haste to a city of Judah, and entered the house of Zacharias, and greeted her cousin Elizabeth. And it happened when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary that the babe leaped in her womb. Like, I know who that is. Not Mary, but I know who that is. Elizabeth at this time was in her 6th month of pregnancy with John the Baptist. It would not be a stretch to understand from the previous passage that Mary was also now pregnant with Jesus, right? If Elizabeth was in her 6th month, then that would put Mary in her 3rd month, right? So Elizabeth even speaks of Mary as though she knows Mary is an expectant mother. But why is this granted to me, that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For indeed, as soon as the voice of your greeting sounded in my ears, the babe leaped in my womb for joy. So Mary is kind of communicating with John, but she also knows that what Elizabeth knows this, but Mary also knows who she's carrying, and she may have communicated to Elizabeth who she's carrying, and the two put the story together based upon the leaping of John the Baptist in Elizabeth's womb. Now, in Luke 1:56, it says, "And Mary remained with her about 3 months, and returned to her house. time-wise now, okay, we're talking about late March, right? Mary stayed with Elizabeth right to the birth of John the Baptist. Now, Elizabeth's full time came for her to be delivered, and she brought forth a son. We see then that Mary is probably 3 months pregnant when John was born. John was probably born in late March or early April. So when was Jesus Christ born? Well, 6 months later would be September or early October, right? In the autumn of the year, not in the dead of winter. And as so many today mistakenly assume. I'm not trying to take away from the spirit of the year or from the spirit of the birth. I'm just trying to put it in perspective for you because it's important how this goes together. Can we find other biblical evidence that Jesus was born in the autumn rather than in the winter, other than just putting this, temple service together? I'm glad you asked that question because we can. There is more evidence. Now, why were Joseph and Mary going to Bethlehem? Do you remember? Yes, that's right. They went to pay their taxes. Right? It came time for everybody to pay their taxes. And where do you go? You go back to your hometown, and that's where you pay. Just sort of like, you're registered to vote, and you go back to your precinct and you vote. That's the way it is. So we continue in Luke's account. And it came to pass in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus, that was the manager of the area, that all the world should be registered. All the world in this context would mean that all the areas under Roman rule. Caesar ruled Rome, all the holdings of Rome, right? He's the manager of the whole thing. So this census took place while Quirinius was governing Syria. So all went to be registered, everyone to his own city. Now, what kind of people were the Romans when it came to order and efficiency? There was no room for slacking, okay? They wanted to know who was where, who was legal, who was illegal, who was working, who was not working, all of that. Because they build bridges, they build roads, they build buildings, and it takes tax money to do that, just like it does today. And the buildings that in some cases are still in use to this very day, 2,000 years later. Some of the viaducts, some of the road foundations are still there. Their roads were marvels of engineering. They constructed great waterworks, cut tunnels through mountains to take mountain lake water and stream it down to, areas that didn't have water. And they actually cut the tunnel from both sides of the mountain and met in the middle. You know how hard that is to do today? It is impossible almost to do it today because there's no way to locate where you are. You can't send a radio signal through the rock and line it up. You don't just drill a small hole and then make it bigger. You start from both ends and work to the middle. That's a very tough way to build a tunnel. We go from one side to the other, right? Well, they wanted to know exactly where it came out on both sides, so they started from both sides and worked to the middle. It was a marvel of engineering. And these waterworks took lots of money and lots of resources and lots of food and slaves and everything to get this done. So a census was necessary. Even today, our city planning owes a great deal to the Romans and the way they did it. Even much of modern government and military organization is copied from the Romans. They were masters of organization and structure. So, would the Romans then have ordered a census in the dead of winter and not on your life? They wouldn't do it. That's not very efficient. This would have defeated the whole purpose. In winter, people don't move. Temperatures drop below freezing around Jerusalem. You can't just jump on a caravan and go traipsing across the desert and it drops down to 20 degrees. Everybody would be dead. Be crazy. You'd have protests all over the place. People wouldn't show up. And the roads would have been muddy and soggy and wet, cold rains, and even occasional snow. It would have been a mess. It would have been a terrible time to travel, especially for a wife nearing her delivery. So, one author states that this census could hardly have been done at that season, for such a time would surely not have been chosen by the authorities for public enrollment, which necessitated the populations traveling from all parts to their natal or their beginning districts. Storms and rain making journeys both unsafe and unpleasant in winter, except in especially favorable years. Snow is not at all uncommon in Jerusalem in the winter months, and it has sometimes gotten so deep that people have lost their way just outside the gates. So it's not a time for travel. No rational Roman, and Caesar Augustus was rational to a T, would not have scheduled a census in winter. For an agrarian society, such as that of first century Judea, a census in the autumn, when the crops would have been safely gathered in, would have made much more sense. So, now you know why Christmas could not have been December 25th. So when was it, though? When was it? Well, if we pick up our story in Luke again, we find the other biblical evidence for the true timing of Jesus' birth. Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, which is really nowhere. Seaside, but a small town, to be sure, insignificant, not on the way to anything, because he was of the house and lineage of David, and he had to be registered with Mary, who was also 14th generation of the house of David, his betrothed wife, who was with child. So it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished for her to be delivered. Now, we don't know really how far ahead of time that they traveled, nor how long they were there for the census. The essential point is that the most important human birth in all of human history took place under these circumstances. That's what we're trying to get to, so listen closely. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling cloth, and laid him in a manger, which is kind of a feed trough, I guess, because there was no room for them in the inn. Well, why? Why? These are, Joseph was a carpenter. That's a good paying job. Okay? He's not a farmer. He's a carpenter. He builds houses and furniture and tools and all kinds of stuff. He's like the machinist of today. Somebody with those skills would have had money, easily been able to afford an inn. But why was there no room for Joseph and Mary in Bethlehem? We heard a great deal from understanding the culture of the time, and this is what we learned. If we have judged the time frame correctly in the autumn, based on John being conceived shortly after the time of the first term of Abijah, right? That 2-week term where Zacharias serves around Pentecost, and his birth following 9 months later, followed by Jesus' birth 6 months after that in late September or possibly early October, was something else happening at that particular time of year that would have created crowded conditions in Bethlehem? And the answer is, yes, there was. I'm just reading something in the chat room. Thank you very much, Greenheart. Thank you very much for that. She's explaining. So, late September, early October, as it turns out, is the autumn festival season on God's calendar. One of the 3 times in the year when families would travel to Jerusalem to observe God's holy days. And this you can read about in Deuteronomy. It goes way, way back. With the Jews of Israel still obeying this command, even today it is difficult to find a hotel room in Jerusalem at this time of year. The population of Jerusalem is not very large, during the rest of the year. But during the time of the festivals, it could swell to hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah, that's a lot of people to feed, to take care of sewage, to take care of housing, laundry, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it is really, really busy. And so it was in this time of year. Jerusalem swelled to overflowing, okay? Lots and lots of traffic, lots of normal commerce that went on in Jerusalem was greatly slowed down during this period of time. This affected nearby towns such as Bethlehem, which is just a few miles away from Jerusalem. If you go to Jerusalem, it's not a long walk. It's a good walk. It's a good Uber from there. Because of this huge influx of people, every single house was filled. People made tons of money from the pilgrims that came in. They wanted to rent a room or rent a bed or rent a couch or, have a place to put their donkey or their camel that they rode in on. I mean, people made money during this time. It was a big tourist time. And Jesus' Mary did not find a place in what was normally used to shelter, people. They had to find lodging in a place that was used to shelter animals. It certainly wouldn't have been first class, but they likely were thankful to have even that. So the other key that we have is from the shepherds. Okay, this is important because the one thing we know about shepherds is they take their sheep to the fields to fatten them up and to let them grow wool and all that, and then they bring them in to shear them and all that. But what they would normally do is they would drive their sheep into like a valley that had ridges all the way around it that the sheep couldn't climb. And one or two shepherds would stay at the mouth of the valley or the canyon, or like a fjord without too much water in it. And then the rest of the shepherds would go to town and they would buy supplies and shop and do various things. And then they would spell each other. And that way one or two shepherds could keep everybody's flocks in at the same time. And there's a neat story about that too. If I remember it, I'll tell you it. But continuing in Luke's account, we find further proof that Jesus was not born in the winter. And verse 8 is what we go with. Now, there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. You remember that? Yes? Okay. This likewise shows that these events did not take place in winter, because the common practice of shepherds was to keep their flocks in the open fields from April unto October. But in the cold and wet winter months, they took their flocks back home and they sheltered them. Okay, they put them in barns. They put them in groves of trees where they could stay warm and keep from getting soaking wet. I don't know if you've ever seen sheep when they get soaking wet, but it's not something that really smells great. And sheep can get infections. They get fungus and bugs and everything else in their thick wool, just like anything would if it's wet out in the open. So let's see. We'll go to the Interpreter's one-volume commentary. This is printed in 1971. It says this, and I quote, "Against the birth of Christ occurring on December 25th, since the weather would not have permitted shepherds watching over their flocks in the fields at night. It would have been all over with shepherds watching their fields at night by October." Adam Clark's commentary says, and I quote, "As these shepherds had not yet brought home their flocks, it is presumptive argument that October had not yet commenced, and that consequently our Lord was not born on the 25th of December when no flocks were out in the fields, nor could he have been born later than September, as the flocks were still in the fields by night. On this very ground, the nativity in December should be given up. Feeding of the flocks by night in the fields is a chronological fact. It has been that way for thousands of years. It casts considerable light upon this disputed point." So the evidence in Luke points to a late September birth. Now, one other thing is I'm watching the chat room too. Greenhearts is saying Freedom Slips is 100% listener supported. Freedom of speech, live internet, radio platform. It's a 10-year anniversary, is January 1st, 21, which is coming up. The best is yet to come. Team Trump all the way. I'm with you. I'm totally with you. And we're glad to be part of the Revolution Radio family. Monique Lasson had this time slot for years and years, and she retired from it, and I was lucky enough to petition for it and got this time slot. It matches my work schedule pretty well, and I hope that you all enjoy me being here on Wednesdays and Sunday nights. I'm on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. So both of these networks are in the top networks on what's called TalkStream Live. TalkStream Live is where all of the streaming radio programs go out to. Blaze TV and Newsmax and all of them go out through TalkStream. And Truth Frequency and Revolution Radio are in the top 15 or 18 radio networks out there, which is really, really good. And X Squared Radio, which is America Free Radio Studios here outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, we are probably the number one or number two program on both of those networks. So we greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here. I hope you do too. Make sure that you hit those like buttons wherever you're listening, on Twitch or DLive or Facebook or YouTube. Make sure you hit the like button. That goes a long way for those platforms to know that we're doing a good job here. We try to bring you very, very good content and satisfy you all. And I thank you very much, Wild Bill. He's on YouTube, says, been with you since the Red Pill 78 show, and I'm sure Red Pill really appreciates that. And it's a good family to be with. So we got a few minutes left in this first hour. So let me see if I can get through this part. So we're going to continue a little bit in Luke. It says, then the angel said unto them, to the shepherds in the fields, as they appeared to them, don't be afraid, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord, and this shall be the sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And they came with haste, and they found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger. Now when they had seen him, they made widely known the saying which was told them concerning this child. Shepherds are a cantankerous lot. Now, we might notice that only the shepherds arrived in time to see Jesus in the manger. The wise men, they didn't arrive till much later, and they didn't see the manger, and they didn't see Jesus in swaddling clothes. I'll explain to you in a minute. So when 8 days were completed for the circumcision of the child, his name was called Jesus. His name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. Now, when the days of her purification, according to the law of Moses, were completed, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord, as it is written in the law of the Lord. Every male who opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice of a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. This was called redeeming the firstborn. It's out of Leviticus. And it tells us that this ceremony occurred 40 days, 6 weeks, 40 days after the birth of a son. So if Christ was born in late September, we are now somewhere in mid-November, right? 40 days. Now we continue the story flow in Matthew. We'll go from Luke to Matthew. We'll go to chapter 2. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. They saw the star. They were wise men, which means they read the scriptures, whatever language it was, whoever recorded them. We have no idea what book they were reading from. But they knew that they were to look at a certain place in the heavens, and when a new star occurred, they knew that the Savior was going to be born. So these guys were not only wise, they were also wealthy. Some say they were 3 kings. So they gathered their gifts together, and they decided to travel together. Probably was more than 3 of them, because 3 guys don't just travel in the desert with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Okay, you got to have support staff. You got to have people that go look for water. You got to have people that prepare food. You got to have people that care for the animals. You got to have people that watch for people that are preying on people that are going in the desert. Usually it's a caravan. A caravan is several thousand people, and it's an organized thing. And they have, groups that do nothing but work to protect caravans, to keep marauders and bandits off of it, so that women and children can roam freely up and down the caravan, talking to one another and socializing. It's a weeks-long thing to cross the desert together. You camp together for safety in numbers. So the kings, or these wise men, or these 3 individuals from the east, were probably traveling the same way. It's not like, hey, let's catch the 2:00 caravan. It has to be planned. You have to, takes time to get your supplies together and to get there. So, yes, it's Wednesday. This week is going too fast, Early Bird said, and Moverling agrees with that. It's rare that you get a week with 2 Fridays, but this is one of them, right? Today's Friday. We're not going to work tomorrow or Friday or Saturday or Sunday, and then you get the calendar Friday, which of course is Christmas Day. And that's okay. I don't mind having a week with 2 Fridays. It would be nice to have a week with 2 paydays, wouldn't it? But so it is. So anyway, what happened is when they arrived, and it was some time later, because we don't know when the caravan left, we do know that they got the sign, hey, there's the star. Let's get our stuff together and catch the next caravan. It could have been months. It could have been 6 months before they made this trip. So they went to Jerusalem, to Bethlehem, looking for Joseph and Mary and Jesus. And they're not having any luck. They said, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. And that's when Herod, the king, heard this. Okay? Somebody's in town. These 3 guys, they're foreigners. We understand what they're saying, but they have accents and they have money. And they said hey, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
sleeps. Let the magic rise.
We're an anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting. Yes, I see. By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs. Be quiet. But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more... Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. You what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
All right, thank you so much. We're back. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about Herod. Herod is an interesting guy, a terrible guy, Herod, son of Herod, and he was a paranoid. So when the wise men were inquiring around town, it didn't take long for the rumor to get back to Herod. Hey, some guys are in town and they're looking for not just anybody, they're looking for the king of the Jews. So when Herod heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, why did this news disturb Herod? Well, other historical accounts attest to Herod's total paranoia about being overthrown. The news that a new king of the Jews had been born threatened his position. So this is Herod Sr. Herod Jr. is the one that Jesus goes to, and he mocks Jesus. This Herod dies a horrible death at the end of this because of this. Herod obviously knew of the traditions and prophecies relating to the Messiah. And when he had gathered all the chief priests, his chief priests and his scribes together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. Notice that they call him the Christ. He's not just Jesus. He's rumored to be the Messiah. The Messiah has an office. The office is the Christ in the priesthood. It's a very, very powerful position. It has a lot of Old Testament power that goes with it, and scriptures that we don't even have in the Bible. So they said to him, well, legend has it that he's going to be born in Bethlehem of Judea. So King Herod carefully concealed his murderous intentions. And Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. When did the star appear again? Well, it was about, a year and something ago, and it appeared in the east. It was there for about 2 months, long enough for these wise men to follow it, and it brought them here. And so then he said, "Go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me that I may come and worship him also." Now, notice that Herod referred to Jesus not as a baby, but as a young child. He realized how long their travels would have taken the wise men, possibly from far away as, maybe Partha, which is several hundred miles, or the region around Babylon, where the Israelites and Jews had been exiled centuries before. Herod knew from when the star had appeared that he was not seeking a newborn baby anymore, but he was seeking a young boy, now considerably older, probably older than 2 years. And to remove any threat to his position, Herod put to death all of the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all the districts from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Herod, covering all his bases in protecting his throne, ordered the murderous slaughter of all those 2 years old and under. Now, first of all, what kind of soldier would follow that order? The perfect soldier, that's who. Can you imagine going from house to house and pulling all the boys 2 years of age and under out and killing them in the streets? Well, that's what Herod did. The wise men were miraculously guided to the Christ child, and when they had come into the house, it was not a manger anymore, the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother. Typical nativity scene completely falls apart at this point, right? Because we're not talking about a baby anymore. We're not talking about swaddling clothes. We're talking about a toddler. There's no mention of a manger. Rather, Jesus was, as stated, in a house. Joseph was a carpenter and could work anywhere if he had his tools with him. And Jesus was no longer an infant. He was a young child. These wise men obviously visited Jesus long after the shepherds had come and gone, perhaps a year or more later. The typical manger scene includes 3 wise men. The Bible, however, nowhere says how long the wise men were there. So this is the story. This is the story that we've been told over and over and over again. Jesus was given gifts. Let's see here. He was given 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, why these 3 particular gifts? Their symbolism is striking when we understand it. Gold was a gift for royalty. In this case, the chosen king of the Jews and ultimately the King of Kings and Lord of Lords who will rule over the entire earth. Frankincense was an incense intimately connected with the priesthood and temple sacrifices, foreshadowing the fact that Jesus Christ would serve as our high priest and give himself as the perfect sacrifice to pay the penalty for the sins of mankind. Myrrh had a much more sobering symbolism. When a person dies, this perfuming agent was wrapped with the body to help cover up the stench of death. Jesus' own body would be wrapped in linen with myrrh and, of course, with aloes. Jesus was born the Son, but he became the Christ through his mortal life. I cover much more of this in March or April when we do the Easter story. We do talk about the passion of the Christ, but I talk about it from early on, and I will take you there and lead you by the hand, minute by minute, from the time Jesus arrives in Jerusalem for the Passover, the final Passover, But I'm going to cover this right now because it fits, and you need to know it so that you kind of know what the purpose of life is and how this all fits together. So we read in Hebrews chapter 5. This is a chapter in the the Testament that New Testament that people kind of breeze over. They don't pay much attention to Hebrews. But I need to explain some things to you so that we'll fit together. In Hebrews chapter 5, it says, "And no man taketh this honor unto himself, but he that is called of God, as was Aaron." Okay? You remember we talked about the Aaronic priesthood. Moses was a high priest, and Aaron was, the Aaronic priesthood was the lesser priesthood. It was sort of the adopted Levitical priesthood. So modern people can be adopted into the Levitical priesthood through the Aaronic line, and then Melchizedek is the Moses line. But I'm going to explain that to you, okay? "So also Christ not glorified himself to be made an high priest, but he that said unto him, Thou art my son, today I have begotten thee." Who would that be? Well, that would be God the Father, right? Jesus was his only begotten son, correct? So God said to Jesus later in his life that now you're a high priest. And in verse 6 it says, "And he saith also in another place," and this is not a capital H. And this is why you need to understand how this fits together. "And he saith also in another place," because it's not a capital H. We're not talking about God here. We're talking about a man. We're talking about a high priest who gives Jesus the Melchizedek priesthood. "As he saith also in another place, Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek." It used to be called the priesthood after the holy order of God, but since it was considered blasphemous to say the name of God or an analog of God, they would use Melchizedek as an example of the priesthood, because Melchizedek was the greatest holder of the priesthood after the holy order of God. He was so great, in fact, that he became king of Salem. All right? King of Salem, which would be Jerusalem. And Melchizedek was so great as a high priest that even Abraham paid his tithing to Melchizedek. So you understand who Melchizedek was. It was not some obscure name. Melchizedek was a man without beginning of days nor end of life. If you follow the record of Melchizedek, he was born to Noah's brother to his wife. Okay? Well, Noah, like on Noah's Ark, which would make Melchizedek very old. In fact, the legend is that Melchizedek was born to his mother, and she was a virgin because her husband, like Zacharias, was serving in a temple mission and could not defile himself, and she became pregnant. And, of course, he thought that she'd fooled around on him and ordered her out of his sight lest he strike her and defile himself. Yeah, get that. And it so broke her heart that she died in childbirth and giving birth to Melchizedek. And then, of course, Angel Gabriel shows up and says, "This is Melchizedek. By the way, we're taking him with us, and we'll bring him back at an appropriate time." So, anyway, we're talking about Melchizedek, who in the days of his flesh, Melchizedek giving the priesthood to Jesus, and Jesus going into the desert to serve or to pray, and to fast for 40 days, who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with strong crying and tears unto him that was able to save him from death, and was heard in that he feared, though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. In other words, he lived a mortal life, but he made all the right decisions. because unlike us, he was perfect. But he wasn't born complete. He was born incomplete without the mortal component. He had to learn the mortal component and overcome it. That's what we're talking about. Learn the obedience by the things which he suffered. Just like you suffer, only you don't learn. I don't learn. We're kind of stubborn that way. And being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that obey him. Called the high priest after the order of Melchizedek, of whom we have many things to say and hard to be uttered, seeing you are dull of hearing. For when the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become such as have need of milk and not of strong meat. In other words, all of you that are listening to this tonight already have life experience. You should not be learning the basics anymore. Like, do I believe in God? Am I a child of God? What's the purpose of life? You shouldn't be asking these questions. You should already know the answers, and you should be teaching others those answers. But you're not. You're still receiving milk and not ready for strong meat. Well, you just keep listening to this program, and I'll get it down your neck. But for everyone that useth milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he or she is a babe. But strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. That's what we do here at America Free Radio. We exercise your senses so that you can discern both good and evil. So, Matthew and Luke reveal the true story of the birth of Jesus Christ and the general timing of when it really occurred. John the Baptist was born in the spring. His cousin Jesus was born 6 months later, probably in late September, possibly early October. The shepherds visit immediately. The wise men maybe a year and a half later. It's tragic. Oh, by the way, why didn't Jesus die? That's a good question. Because what happened was Joseph and Mary received a revelation in prayer that they should leave. And so they packed up and they moved to Egypt. They went to Abydos in Egypt. I have been to Abydos many times. And I can tell you that when you go to Seti's temple in Abydos, the one thing that you notice right away, if you go to the temple there, which has been exhumed since Seti or Dorothy Eddy located it and they unburied it and put it on display for tourists to visit, is that displayed on the walls inside there is the passion of, no, not the Christ, the passion of Osiris. Yes, Osiris was also virgin born, and Osiris was killed and dismembered, and what happened is Isis found all the pieces and put Osiris back together and resurrected him. And that's what the story of Seti's temple is. That was the whole thing that the temple was built for. And if you look on the walls, that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what they depict. And each year during Christ's youth, as he grew up in Abydos, he would have seen the passion of Osiris. So he already knew the story of the resurrection for many years. By the time he left Abydos and traveled to the east, visited peoples that he visited, and I've been to Tibet, and there's a record of him being there, and then traveling back to Jordan, where he met John the Baptist when he was 30 years old. We're not exactly sure when he left Abydos. My guess is somewhere around 17 or 18 years old. So he traveled for 10 or 12 years before maybe as much as 13 or 14 years, but I think for sure 10 or 12 years before he went back to Jerusalem, to Jordan, to meet John the Baptist, get baptized then, and begin his mission. So now you know how all this fits together. So when we talk about Jesus of Nazareth, he's not Jesus of Nazareth. He didn't grow up there. He didn't grow up there. He's not Jesus of Bethlehem. He only lived there till he was less than 2 years old. He's not Jesus of Jerusalem. Really, truthfully, he's Jesus of Abydos, Egypt. Jesus of Abydos. Yeah. So it's tragic that the true story should have become so badly garbled by human traditions. It's also tragic that people ignore the Bible's clear instructions and they invent their own timeline. Jesus himself roundly condemned religious leaders of his day who were, and I quote, making the word of God of none effect through your tradition, which you have delivered, and many such like things you do. A strong and weighty biblical principle is found in Deuteronomy 12. It tells why we should observe the annual holy days and festivals God has revealed in his word, not traditional holidays borrowed from paganism. And yet, that's exactly what we do. I quote in Deuteronomy, it says, "You shall not worship the Lord your God in that way, for every abomination to the Lord which he hates," capital H on he hates, "have they done to their gods. Whatever I command you, be careful to observe it, shall not add to it nor take away from it." Have you ever thought it curious that although two of the gospel writers describe the circumstances surrounding Christ's birth, and we just went over them tonight? By the way, the other two don't even mention the birth at all. Neither of them gives the date. Has it puzzled you that the Bible never once ever mentions Christmas, and that none of the biblical writers says anything about commemorating or celebrating the birth? We just don't. What we do find, however, explicit commands to commemorate Jesus Christ's sacrifice and his death on our behalf and his resurrection. We also find commands to observe other biblical festivals, the same festivals Jesus and the New Testament church celebrated. So isn't it about time you looked into the Bible to see what God's word says about those? Christ was born in the fall of the year, not the winter. Many have mistakenly believed he was born at the beginning of winter, December 25th, and they're just wrong. They're just wrong. So let's see here. Numerous encyclopedias plainly state that Christ was not born on December 25th. The Catholic Encyclopedia directly confirms this. In all likelihood, it says Christ was born in the fall. A lengthy technical explanation would prove this point. So since we now know that December 25th was nowhere near Christ's actual birth date, where did the festival associated with this date come from? That's a very good question. Now, we read this quote under Christmas. In the Roman world, the Saturnalia, that's December 17th, was a time of merrymaking and exchanging of gifts. December 25th was also regarded as the birth date of the Iranian mystery god Mithra, the Sun of Righteousness, spelled S-U-N, not S-O-N. You remember, Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in his wings. That's S-O-N, not S-U-N. On the Roman New Year, which is January 1st, right, because we use the Roman calendar, houses were decorated with greenery and lights, and gifts were given to children and the poor. To these observances were added the German and Celtic Yule rites, when the Teutonic tribes penetrated into Gaul, Britain, and Central Europe. Food and good fellowship, the Yule log and the Yule cakes, greenery, fir trees, gifts and greetings, all commemorating different aspects of this festive season. Fires and lights, symbols of warmth and lasting life, have always been associated with the winter festival, both pagan and Christian. Now, final quote about the selection of December 25th as the birth date of Christ is necessary. Let's see here. There's an article in the Toronto Star. It's December of 1984. It's interesting. It was written by Alan Edmonds. And it was titled, "We Owe a Lot to Druids," which I know we want to think of Celtic, but we're actually talking about the Dutch. And Dutch to this day are the campers, okay? If you go to Europe and you visit in the spring or the summer, you're going to see these camper trailers or tent trailers everywhere. Those are the Dutch. The Dutch have always done this. They've always traveled to the wilderness. They've always made campfires. They've always, been close to nature. They're the flower growers of the world, okay? The Dutch, they're tied into this Druidism. So the Reformation cast a blight on Christmas. By then, of course, clever ecclesiastical politicians had adopted the pagan midwinter festival as the alleged birth date of Jesus of Nazareth, and thrown in a few other pagan goodies to make their takeover more palatable. December 25th was not selected because it was the birth of Christ or because it was even near it. It was selected because purely it coincided with the idolatrous pagan festival Saturnalia. And this celebration must be carefully examined. In any event, we do not know the exact date of Christ's birth. While God certainly could have made it known, he chose to hide it from the world's eyes. So that's the reason, I think, why a Christmas season has so much commerciality associated with it. That's why 70% of all the retail in the world is done at this time of year. People save up their money and they buy gifts and they wrap them, in festive papers to give them as surprises to people that they love and people that they don't know and the poor and whatnot. It is all part of this pagan celebration. It has little to do with the birth of Jesus and Frosty the Snowman and Santa Claus and the reindeer and all that. It's a great story, but it doesn't have anything to do with the birth of Jesus. Now, parents reason that they owe the whole Christmas myth to their kids, right? Christmas traditions are focused primarily on the kids, and they're certainly the center of most of what happens. I have grandkids and kids, and believe me, it's still that way. Although we have done some rather unconventional things. A couple of years ago, we got together, and my daughter brought her karaoke machine, and so we started singing songs. Well, the trouble was we all wanted to sing, and there was only one mic. So we just grouped together, and we put the songs on the karaoke machine. We laid the microphone down, and we all sang together. 4-part harmony. It was really good, really a cool, spontaneous Christmas. Just pagan celebration. No, it was great to do this. So he says in his article, "I know because I kept 17 Christmases. My older sister and younger brother and I were the recipients of much and the givers of very little on that day. And it all started with the Santa Claus lie. Some years ago, a priest in New Jersey told his Sunday school class that Santa was a myth. Well, this outraged the parents, and his supervisors were swift. He had killed Santa. He had destroyed the family tradition. He had usurped family authority. The article continued. He was officially censored by his superiors for being overzealous and insensitive. And what was his crime? He told the truth. According to Langer's Encyclopedia of World History, Santa was a common name for Nimrod throughout Asia Minor. This also was the same fire god who came down the chimneys of the ancient pagans, and the same fire god to whom infants were burned and eaten in human sacrifice among those who were once God's people. Today, Santa Claus comes from St. Nicholas. Washington Irving in 1809 is responsible for remaking the original old stern bishop of this same name into the new jolly St. Nick in his Knickerbocker History of New York. Old Nick has long been recognized as a term for the devil. That's why he dresses in red clothes, and originally he dressed in green clothes. You remember who it was that dressed him in red and gave him the rosy cheeks and a smile? Yes, it was Coca-Cola. In 1959, changed jolly old St. Nick's outfit from green to red, and it stuck. In Revelation chapter 2, verses 6 and 15, we read about a doctrine of the Nicolaitanes, the Nicolaitane band, which Christ twice tells his church that he hates. So let's analyze the word Nicolaitane. Means follower of Nicholas. Nikos means conqueror or destroyer. Laos means people. Nicolaitanes, then, are people who follow the conqueror or destroyer, Nimrod. If you have believed that following Christmas is an innocent Christian custom, let this sink in. And the Nicolaitane band is alive and well, I will assure you that. Merchants regularly report that over 60% of their annual sales occur this time of year. This represents a tremendous amount of gift buying. Most today believe that gift giving comes from the Bible example of the three wise men, right? Giving the gifts. But what does God's word say about it? In the Bibliotheca Sacra, it states, and I quote, "The interchange of presents between friends is a like characteristic of Christmas and the Saturnalia, and must have been adopted by Christians from the pagans, as the admonition of Tertullian plainly shows. Like Tertullian, I'm sorry, I got that wrong, Tertullian. Like every other aspect of Christmas, the shocking truth is that even this supposed Christian custom, it doesn't come from the Bible. It is an irony that people love to believe they are following the custom of the wise men giving to Christ, when actually they're giving almost exclusively to each other. What hypocrisy! Christ is not remembered at all. The Bible actually teaches that Christmas should not keep birthdays. Christians should not keep birthdays. Numerous scriptures make this principle clear. However, what if you went to a birthday party that had been prepared for you and everybody gave gifts to each other except you? It was your birthday and you didn't get any gifts. That's pretty ridiculous, don't you think? If this happened, you would say that people were being selfish and they were forgetting about you, the birthday person, right? Where's the song? Where's the cake? Where is my card with the $25 in it? In fact, most people give to others on Christmas merely because they expect to get gifts themselves, right? Let's briefly return to the wise men who gave gifts to Christ. The scripture describing this is, again, in Matthew chapter 2. And it's 1 through 11, but I'm gonna paraphrase this. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts of the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Right? That's the story in one sentence. It is commonly supposed that these were birthday presents for baby Jesus. But is this what the Bible actually says? No, it isn't. First, it's important to note that they did not give the gifts to Jesus. They didn't give them to him. They gave the gifts to his parents. They did not stand in his presence and exchange gifts among themselves, right, to give to others. The gifts were presented unto him. Also, they arrived well after his birthday. This is another reason these could not have been birthday gifts. A long-standing ancient custom of the East was to present gifts when coming before a king. These men understood they were in the presence of the King of the Jews. The Bible carries many examples of people sending gifts to kings or presenting them upon arrival of their presence. But usually it is for favor. It is for an assignment. It is for protection. It is for homage, right? The custom is common today when ambassadors or others come into the presence of a world leader. You take an ashtray or a work of art or some kind of, engineering marvel. Finally, notice what the Adam Clark Commentary, Volume 5, page 46 states about what really happened on this occasion. They presented unto him gifts. The people of the East never approached the presence of kings or great personages without a present in their hands. This custom is often noticed in the Old Testament and still prevails in the East and in some of the newly discovered South Sea islands. Gifts were customarily presented to kings. What could be more plain than this? So then we'll talk a little bit about the Christmas tree, but I don't want to get too much into that. I don't want to get too sidetracked on the symbolism of Christmas, because I want to get a main point across here. There are, of course, the wreaths and the Yule logs and the mistletoe, and all of them have a Teutonic nature worship woven throughout them. But what should you do? What should we do this time of year? I mean, can we say, well, I'm not celebrating Christmas. I'm going to do all my Christmas shopping in September. Yeah. Well, I got news for you. There are no Black Friday sales in September. And DJ Adams says, I have Hunter Biden's laptop. Yeah, the FBI's had it for over a year, DJ, and they did nothing. All right, let's see. We are in the final half hour. So what I'm going to do in the spirit of giving is I'm going to give away some lemons. That's what I'm going to do. Not right this second. I'll give you like 5 minutes, and that way you can bounce out of YouTube and go over to dlive.tv/Brooks Agnew. If you have already an account there and you're following me there, no problem. You DLive listeners are going to benefit from it here shortly. But the question is, what should you do? So examine what God told his people they should do and the way they ought to teach their children. You see, generally speaking, mortal beings, I hesitate to call them humans because that's kind of a big subset. I just want to call everybody that is in this case mortals. Is this a bad time for a fake alien invasion? Asking for a friend. I think any time is a good time for a fake alien invasion, right? In fact, when I get done with tonight's program, I'm probably going to go watch the 3rd episode of The Expanse again, because this Friday, the 4th episode comes out, and I really want to see it. is the 5th season of The Expanse. So, Merry Christmas to you, Big T. 1955 was a very good year. It was the year Einstein passed away and the year I was born. So, mortal beings really don't want to obey God. I mean, they do accidentally sometimes, and they feel good when they do it. But like Paul says, that I would do, that I do not. And that I would not, that I do. Mortals. Romans chapter 8, verse 5. It says, "For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit." That's one of the reasons that we fast. We fast because our spirit is basically telling our body, I'm the master here. You'll eat when I say you eat. Until then, I want you to lower your metabolism a little bit and go into maintenance mode, and I'm going to take it from here. And spirit can move quite quickly in you. You do that. So in verse 6 of Romans, it says, "For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace," right? We here at America Free Radio and listeners thereof are not particularly religious people, right? We don't have a religious stamp on us. We don't wear a religious uniform. We don't, we're not loyal to a specific religion, but we are spiritual people. That is to say, when we get close to the Spirit or we get in tune with the Spirit, we can feel it and we act upon it. And if we like that feeling a lot, then we try to stay in that resonant frequency where we're in tune to that high level frequency of the Spirit of God, and we benefit from it. We resonate from it and we gain strength from it. We're not so focused on the flesh, because the satisfaction of this biological transducer is very temporary. Although I think eating is wonderful. I eat for entertainment, not to stuff myself to pain. So, because the carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. Now, enmity is a very interesting word. Where have we heard it before? Oh yeah, the Garden of Eden. You remember the Garden of Eden? When God put enmity between Eve, the seed of Eve, and Lucifer, so that Lucifer could not possess the bodies of the children of Eve. Yes, enmity is a shield or a barrier between two dimensions or energies. It can be pierced, but only with our permission. That's how powerful we are as souls. No God or angel can overcome it. He wants happiness, joy, and blessings to flow into people's lives. However, if we do not choose His Spirit, then those gifts cannot be given to us. We will have to make them on our own. And I can tell you from long experience that we cannot make joy as good as His joy. And if we settle for our joy alone, we will live in the shadows our entire lives. If we choose the joy of Lucifer, we will seek to take our own life to escape the pain. People do it every single day. Even Moses was inspired by God to warn parents of the grave responsibility that they have in what and how they teach one another, including their own children. Here's his instruction. It goes back to Deuteronomy. "Now these are the commandments which the Lord your God commanded to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you go to possess it. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And when your son asks you in time to come, saying, what mean the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments which the Lord our God has commanded you? Then you shall say unto your son, we were Pharaoh's bondmen in Egypt, and the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before the Lord our God, and as he has commanded us. Now, not all histories and traditions are to be followed. I'm serious. If you want to get closer to God and Jesus, you don't necessarily need to follow these traditions. You don't have to walk in that walk. You don't have to memorize these things. You don't have to, become a Jew or carry the Torah around in your backpack all the time or cut your hair funny. You don't have to do any of that. In fact, you're cautioned against doing that. I'll take another ancient record. Let's take, let's see here. Let's take the Book of Mormon. Nephi. Nephi begins the record in the Book of Mormon by saying, I, Nephi, having been born of goodly parents, therefore was taught in all the learning of my father. His father was a powerful man in Jerusalem, obviously taught his sons. Nephi was the youngest, but he learned all of those things. But this is the interesting thing about the Book of Mormon. If you read it several times, you'll see this. Nephi did not teach his people of those ways. Why? He knew all the teachings of his father, right? All the learning of his father. But he didn't teach it to his children. He didn't teach it to his followers in the new world. Why? Because they were corrupt. The teachings were corrupt. He made a direct connection to God. He did not continue the traditions of the Jews with his people. His older brother, Laman, did exactly that. He did keep those traditions. In fact, because he was the eldest brother, he thought that he should have received the inheritance of the power and the blessings of his father Lehi. And he didn't. And that jealousy is so classic, right? Lucifer and Adam and, David. It goes all the way through the scriptures. We look at the eldest son and youngest son, Esau, Jacob. This jealousy is what ruined heaven. This envy of age and birthright. It ruined heaven. It ruins the earth to this very day. Look at the way the establishment party behaves. They believe this is their earth. They believe they're the ones that should inherit Washington, not the people, not the spirit, not an individual who is not of that birthright, not of that lineage. He's unworthy because he does not have the genealogy. Laman became the founder of the people who exterminated the Nephites and took all their lands, even to the north countries. It is believed even that the Lamanites, the descendants of Laman, are the ones who were here when Columbus arrived. When the settlers began to come west, they ran into the Lamanites. God took Israel out of Egypt, out of the customs of the world around them, and he revealed his law to them. He does not want his people going back to the traditions, customs, and ways from which he had called them out. Loving nature and caring for the earth is fine. It's divine. But worshiping them and cursing carbon as the devil is a short road to poverty of the soul. This is a season when we heighten our awareness of the Christ. And that is good. But in your songs and meals and giving, remember the reason why you chose to be mortal in the first place. In mortality, time slows down. So we can consider and study moments. We could see space between the stars simply because we have slowed down the universe with our consciousness. Immeasurable energy has been spent, and rules of resonance have been written so that mortal life can be accommodated. Your mortal life. Each of us has crafted a certain amount of what we call time to write our record in the fabric of space-time. Call it the Akashic Record if you want to. Call it the Book of Life. We only get to write in this book in mortality. You don't get to write in it while you're dead. You don't get to write in it while you're a spirit. That's unfair. You could see the beginning and the end, all sides. You are limited in your perspective only when you're mortal. That's why we come here. When we get to exercise our free will, for better or for worse, that's why we come here. Remember, every ancient writing records what happens when people forsake the Christ in their souls. If we go back to the Book of Mormon, there's another book in there called Helaman. And Helaman's a very interesting section. It talks about the reign of the judges and all of these things. But in the middle, in chapter 4, verses 12 and 13, it says this. And it was because of the pride of their hearts, because of their exceeding riches. Yea, it was because of their oppression to the poor, withholding their food from the hungry, withholding their clothing from the naked, and smiting their humble brethren upon the cheek, making a mock of that which was sacred, denying the spirit of prophecy and of revelation, murdering and plundering and lying and stealing, committing adultery, rising up in great contentions, and deserting away into the land of Nephi among the Lamanites. And because of this, their great wickedness and their boastings in their strength, they were left in their own strength. Therefore, they did not prosper, but were afflicted and smitten and driven before the Lamanites until they had lost possession of almost all their lands. This is what happens. The people become haughty, they become rich, they become politicians. They're all millionaires. They all can say and do anything they want. And they don't ever have to worry about losing an election because the fix is in. They are a community. They watch each other's backs. They march together. They party together. They have sex together, as it were. They're a carnal group, these 535. Not all of them, but most of them. I would say 70% of Congress is compromised, wouldn't you? Yes. Bribery, blackmail, subterfuge, money laundering, drugs, adultery, pedophilia, right? All of this. And when you think God is coming, you think he's going to come and bless us? No. He's going to come and judge us because we didn't do anything. We stood by. We let it happen, and we supported it with our taxes. Thank you very much, Brian, for that generous donation, and Merry Christmas to you. Let's go ahead and give these lemons away before it gets too late. My gosh, let's be generous. Let's be generous right now. All those people that are in D Live right now, here we go. Let's see if it'll pull it up here. And hold on a second. I'm going to submit and okay. Why it's doing that? Okay, here we go. We're going to distribute the award. 500 and go. All right, so now it's taking about 30 seconds. It's going to search for the people that are on DLive, and it's going to select a few of you, and it's going to distribute these lemons. And Merry Christmas to you all. It is blockchain cryptocurrency, but it's real money, and eventually you can cash it out and buy that car if you want to. So this happens every single time. Why? And it's because of that enmity I was talking about. We choose to block God from our hearts, and we choose to walk without him. And when you see governments craft laws that distribute our money into their own pockets or the pockets of their friends, and you do nothing about it, then the result is always the same. I'm asking you, pleading with you to remember who you are. I'm asking you to remember who Jesus is and what he did to become the Christ. It was a price he paid for you. It was a high price because you are worth it. Mortal life is worth it. Don't waste a moment of it waiting for another paycheck or a family vacation or for retirement, for God's sake. Seize each second and assign it to a moment, and then treasure each moment for the most valuable thing in the universe, because that's what it is. That's what you are. And I am humbled to the dust that you are here with me tonight. Supposed to be distributing 1,000 lemons, but I don't see who it went to. I know there are people in there. Should be running right now, and I don't see where it went to. It'll tell me in a minute. It says rewards will distribute in 0 seconds. 0 seconds would be like now, okay, like now. I'm sorry, it isn't working, but I was going to give away 1,000 lemons, and we'll see where it goes. It may pop up here in the next second or two. There's bandwidth things, you know. We may have one more broadcast or two before the end of the year, but this Sunday, I'm probably going to take off and just be with my family, okay? We'll be running archive that night on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. So this is the final live program for before Christmas. And maybe around the new year, we'll have a Wednesday program and then not a Sunday program again. But I want you to go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little bit every day. Seek it out. It's there in everybody. And acknowledge it. Look people in the eye. Show them who you are. And bear witness that it's a wonderful thing to be mortal. All of the pains and all of the pleasures that go with it. The ability to create life in our own image, the challenge of time and mystery and unknown is why we come here. So don't ever feel like you're overwhelmed or like it's too much of a challenge for you. And again, where we go one, we go all. Peace, Earth Explorers.